Well, what do I know about politics? I know enough about modern day politics to realise that it's not working here in the UK. Hence, the solution is in the title, reform. Political reform is definitely needed. And it doesn't take the brains of Elon Musk to realise that. What do I know? Now, I do know about national security. I do know about safety. I do know about personal safety. I do know about community. I do know about team.
Keir Starmer just got verbally pressed into another dimension by none other than ex-SAS bulldozer Ant Middleton. And oh boy, it was not a yoga session. Picture a tactical takedown so savage, Starmer's tie almost filed for asylum. From leadership fluff to political tumbleweeds, and didn't hold back. And you're about to witness a takedown so brutal it deserves its own Mi-5 file. Strap in, because this is the roast Keir didn't train for. Let's get into the carnage.
Today we publish a white paper on immigration, a strategy absolutely central to my plan for change that will finally take back control of our borders. Between 2019 and 2023, net migration quadrupled until in 2023, it reached nearly 1 million. That's about the population of Birmingham, our second largest city. That's not control. It's chaos. A one-nation experiment.
Somewhere in the land of tactical gear, high-altitude training, and grown men crawling through barbed wire for fun, Ant Middleton, former Special Forces, full-time boot camp boss, and part-time demolisher of fragile egos, took one look at Keir Starmer and decided, you know what? Britain's had enough soggy leadership. Because there's one thing that keeps Ant awake at night. It's not enemy fire or jungle warfare. It's politicians who make wet cardboard seem assertive.
I'll leave that to the politicians. But listen, what I do know is national security, and that's what we're going to touch on very first and foremost. Now, when I spoke to Nigel and the wider team a couple of years ago, for those that don't know, I do a TV show called SAS, Who Dares Wins, where I bring in broken people and I strip them down so they can identify who they are, so they have an identity, and then I build them back up to go out into the world and to achieve. And I got asked a question by Nigel and his wider team saying, could you do that with a broken country? How do you do that? And we went through how I broke people.
Now, Ant Middleton doesn't usually wade into politics, unless it's to metaphorically body slam it. But when a man like Starmer insists on leading with all the conviction of a weather vane in a hurricane, you can almost hear Ant's military instincts twitch. The man spent his life conquering literal mountains. Looking at Starmer probably felt like tripping over a speed bump labeled policy ambiguity.
I'm not going there to avoid any taxes. I'm going to come away from the way that he runs the country. He's got no ambition. He's got no drive, and he's just off-putting. I'm going to spend my time between Dubai and Spain. You know, I'm not going there to try and save money. I won't have an income coming from the UK, so you know I don't need to be here. And
is it what is it about? But Labour have only been in for I think 2 months. So what have they done so catastrophically wrong?
Well, you're talking about the next budget of what they're going to start rising.
Let's start with the obvious. Ant Middleton is built like a fridge full of rage and motivation. He's been trained to make decisions in seconds, decisions that mean life or death. Keir Starmer, meanwhile, once needed 3 weeks in a council of advisors just to decide if the Labour logo should lean a bit to the left. The contrast isn't even fair. One's forged in fire. The other, maybe warmed slightly by focus group, proved microwaves.
Lost my identity. I got confused. When you have a nation of confused people, guess what happens after? Frustration. You get frustrated. Like the individual, very much like the individual. What happens after frustration? Anger. Anger, violence. Violence. What's happening on our streets right now? Violence. Or it teeters into civil unrest, which we want to avoid at all costs. but it's coming.
You see, Anne lives in a world where hesitation gets you killed. Starmer lives in a world where hesitation gets you a BBC interview. Ant leads with gut, grit, and granite. Starmer leads with footnotes, committee consensus, and mild apologies. Ant's idea of a campaign is a 20-mile ruck with a log on his back. Starmer's idea of campaign hardship is forgetting his reusable coffee cup. There's something poetic about watching Ant Middleton metaphorically suplex Starmer's leadership style. While Ant trains recruits by yelling at them until they evolve or cry, Starmer trains Labour MPs by whispering about maybe possibly reconsidering a firm stance. If everyone agrees, and no one's offended, Starmer's tenure has been a masterclass in caution. The kind of caution that makes risk managers look like adrenaline junkies. While Ant says adapt, overcome, survive, Starmer says wait, consult, and maybe issue a tentative newsletter. Picture this. Ant reviewing Starmer's leadership track record like a drill sergeant inspecting socks. He doesn't see a strategy. He sees a pile of May, possibly, and let's circle back. Every time Starmer dodges a direct answer and adds another rep to his deadlift, fueled by fury and the urge to personally drag the Labour leader through an obstacle course.
You think we live in an island of strangers?
I think our country has benefited over very many years through generations from people coming to the UK, being part of our communities and working in our public services. But I also think that the level of migration needs to be controlled and managed, and it needs to come down.
So we are living in partial island of strangers then?
Well, I think we're a country that I think has a really strong country.
Are we or are we not an island of strangers, do you think?
No, I think we're a country where everybody, I think, wants to see.
Because, let's face it, Ant's idea of accountability is shouting into your soul until you remember how to be useful. Starmer's idea of accountability is forming a task force to assess the feasibility of future apologies. If Starmer were ever on one of Ant's military expeditions, he wouldn't make it past the motivational speech. He'd be the one checking the risk assessment forms, while the rest of the team parachutes into enemy terror. And don't get it twisted, this isn't about ideology. It's about action. Middleton doesn't care if your policies are left, right, or orbiting Saturn, as long as you can make a decision before the universe collapses. Starmer, the man, could be handed a golden opportunity and he'd still ask if now is the right time to take advantage of it, after consulting with the admin team. Let's say, just for a moment, the roles were reversed. Anne Middleton leads the Labour Party. That's right, just imagine it. Party conference opens with a tank run. Uphill, in freezing rain. Manifestos are carved into stone tablets and delivered via drone. Shadow cabinet meetings held inside abandoned bunkers with no heating. Just grit and resentment.
I don't think that the Russians are going in there and having an easy time, because they're certainly not. I know people who are on the ground in Ukraine, and they're quite happy at the moment, actually, because they're actually holding them. They think they can genuinely beat them.
But Putin can be in this for the long term. We've seen his track record in these situations. He might be doing this for years.
The guy's unstable. It's clear to see. When I saw his first interview with Putin, I saw how unstable he was, and I thought to myself, wow, this guy's got potential to do something crazy.
Suddenly, the energy in Labour changes. People stop asking what they believe and start fearing what Ant believes. Policies are delivered like battle plans. No more statements riddled with ifs and buts. It's all do this or go home. The media wouldn't even bother with questions. They'd just take notes and hope he doesn't make eye contact. Compare that with current Labour vibes. You've got Starmer, a man who approaches leadership like he's hosting a dinner party for people he doesn't really know. It's all polite nods and strategic avoidance. He's not trying to lead a movement. He's trying not to offend a spreadsheet. And somehow that's supposed to inspire a nation. Let's talk policy for a moment. Not the content, the delivery. Anne Middleton delivers like a punch. Starmer delivers like a postal delay. Ant says what he means, then climbs a rope to prove it. Starmer says what he might mean, depending on the poll, then quietly reverses it during a long weekend. It's almost tragic. Britain's wobbling through crisis after crisis, and the opposition leader is playing hide and seek with opinions. Energy crisis, Starmer has a file. Cost of living, he has a committee. National strikes, oh, you better believe he's got a working group looking into possibly visiting a strike picket line one day when it's safe and the optics are favorable.
And then I got a phone call from my agency saying, Ant, your whole world's about to turn upside down in about 45 minutes to an hour. I said, what do you mean? And then that 45 minutes, an hour came around. The Sun, the Mirror, the Daily Mail, all had these in place promptu sort of articles coming out. Ant Middleton's been fired by Channel 4. Ant Middleton, fired because of BLM tweet. Ant Middleton fired because of teen tweet, pandemic tweet. That's what it's all about.
And while Starmer dithers, Ant's looking at him like he's the human embodiment of a dropped compass. This isn't even a clash, it's a mugging. One man walks into a battlefield. The other walks into a boardroom and checks for allergens. You can practically hear and yelling through the national consciousness. Get a grip, of course, and isn't actually joining a party. That would be too easy. He's not here to play politics. He's here to play politics. He's here to obliterate the idea that leadership has to be meek, mushy, and market-tested. He's the grenade lobbed at the beige fortress of political correctness. And Starmer? He's still inside, trying to write a memo about health and safety protocols for grenade handling. The symbolism here is delicious. On one side, a man who's walked across deserts, climbed icy peaks, and fought actual enemies. On the other, a man who once bravely released a mildly assertive press release about potholes. Middleton's philosophy is simple. If it's not helping, it's in the way. Starmer's philosophy is more nuanced, which is code for unavailable for comment. You almost have to respect the asymmetry. One man dominates through sheer presence. The other blends into wallpaper through sheer caution. If charisma were ammunition, Ant's locked and loaded, and Starmer's still looking for the manual.
If you'd have asked me, 12 months, 2 years ago perhaps, about Keir Starmer, remember I've been a Labour MP, I've met Keir a couple of times, and I've chatted with him, etc. And I would have said 2 years ago, fairly decent guy, bit to the left for me, but not a bad guy. But now, having seen what's happened since he came to power, I have never been more disappointed. And for him to use the word principles, I think is rich coming from Keir Starmer. I mean, the hypocrisy from all of this, we had to listen to.
Middleton doesn't just mock Starmer. He demolishes the entire concept of careful, consultant-driven, PR-filtered leadership. It's not a critique. It's a controlled detonation, the message. Britain doesn't need another politically processed robot with a bar chart. It needs someone who can find a spine and lead from the front. Middleton wouldn't hesitate to lead. He'd march up to the problem, stare it down, and dare it to blink. Starmer would probably draft a letter expressing concern, then hold it for review. It's the difference between getting things done and getting things reviewed, revised, and possibly shelved. Even the aesthetics tell the story. Ant shows up in boots, scars, and a "don't mess with me" stare. Starmer shows up in a suit so tight it probably has a clause about press scrutiny. One looks like he's coming back from battle. The other looks like he's still stuck in a waiting room. And don't forget the people watching. Voters aren't stupid. They see the comparison. One man commands attention. The other carefully negotiates for it. One could lead a charge. The other might lead a discussion group. If you were lost in a forest, you'd want Middleton. If you were lost in a spreadsheet, maybe Starmer. Middleton doesn't just expose Starmer. He exposes a culture of political cowardice that's infected modern leadership. Leaders who are afraid to lead. Politicians who'd rather disappoint slowly than risk a single bold move. In that context, and isn't a critic, he's a cure, a giant, tattooed antidote to dithering.
Boris Johnson had more of a quite a Johnsonian response. He did quite a long post on X, but I think the most intriguing part of that was, to take care is the orange ball chewing manacled gimp of Brussels.
The orange ball chewing?
Orange ball chewing manacled gimp of Brussels is how he described Keir Starmer. He said, most bizarrely of all, he's agreed that Britain will once again be paying countless millions of pounds into EU coffers for the privilege of becoming the non-voting punk of the EU Commission.
It's a great sentence. You've got to give it to him.
He's got away.
And doesn't so much enter Starmer's office as detonate into it. Less a visitor, more a tactical weather event in boots. The room, usually humming with the anemic energy of a beige spreadsheet, instantly surrenders. He doesn't speak. He scans the whiteboard. Starmer's master plan, a tragic mosaic of scribbles like consult unions and reassess position on assessing positions. Ant's glare alone deletes 3 bullet points. A dry erase marker gives up and crumbles in shame. He lifts a Labour policy pamphlet like it's radioactive waste, sniffs it, and declares it fit for kindling. Moments later, it's ablaze on a makeshift survivalist campfire built from 3 pencils, a stress ball, and the last of Starmer's credibility. The smoke alarm shrieks, Starmer's staff whisper, same, then, and drops the nuclear phrase, man up. Instant chose. Pri slides down the banisters in full code red. Her begins drafting a 12-part apology thread on X. A junior aide faints near the recycling bin. Ironically, the only thing in the room showing any backbone. But Ant's not done. It's training time. No mud, no obstacle course. Just a challenge. 24 hours on Twitter, no blocking, no muting. Just raw, unfiltered exposure to the British public. Catastrophe. By hour 6, one staffer tries to outlaw memes. By hour 10, another is curled up by a notification bell. Whispering rat showed like a haunted campfire tale. By the end, half the team defects to the Lib Dems. The other half quietly change their pronouns to done with.
You get abused on a regular basis, and I see it on a regular basis, and it infuriates me.
And you have that split second of, am I going to act? Am I not going to act? And that delay is what people see.
Does politics influence the police force?
That's a really good question. I'm just a lowly DS, you know.
Yeah,
CID.
Listen, you can't hide here, Mark. Come on, I know you know more.
The media it makes the police and it breaks the police.
Yes, there's going to be bad apples. There always is in any organisation. Yes, we're going to make mistakes. We're only human.
People see that tip of the iceberg.
Yep.
And Starmer, he tries to clap back, launch a counterattack, but somewhere between I fundamentally disagree and I appreciate your perspective, he stumbles into agreeing with Ant and recommending mandatory boxing classes for the shadow cabinet. Meanwhile, the country burns, metaphorically and sometimes literally. Cost of living skyrocketing, public morale somewhere near the Earth's core. Voters need a spine, not a spreadsheet. And what does Starmer serve? Nuance, caution, and a detailed review panel led by someone named Nigel, who once ran a sandwich shop. Ant's philosophy, strike now, adjust later, apologize never. Starmer's draft a position paper, test it in 5 constituencies, and release it as a blog post nobody reads. Britain's in a storm, and Keir's still looking for his umbrella receipt. If Labour rebrands under his direction, the new slogan practically writes itself. Labour, maybe, eventually, possibly. They'll print it on beige mugs sold exclusively at low-energy fundraisers featuring lukewarm falafel and whispery jazz. Ant, meanwhile, is out in the real world forging steel out of teenagers with anxiety and ex-bankers in crisis. He builds leaders. Starmer builds advisory panels. Middleton makes warriors. Starmer makes waffle. And when you put these two side by side, well, there's no competition. Ant Middleton leads. He commands rooms like a war drum wrapped in barbed wire. People follow or they get trampled. Starmer talks. People glaze over faster than a soggy Greg's pasty.
Well, you ask yourself 2 questions. 1, does he have that capability? And 2, has he got the minerals? Has he got the balls to use that capability? I'd say no.
And third, I would
I'm
say, what would be his motivation to start a war that would lead to the immediate destruction of himself and his own country?
It would be the next World War III. Basically, what he's done, he's gone into Ukraine. They're amazing people. Their fighting force is holding the fort.
If Britain were a survival mission, Anne would already be halfway up Ben Nevis with a team of badgers and a makeshift spear. Starmer would still be in reception asking if it's too late to reschedule the hike and if there's a vegan option. This isn't just a comparison, it's a massacre. One's a soldier of action, the other's a solicitor of inaction. One leads from the front, the other follows from behind. And even then, he's not quite sure which direction they're headed. In the war zone of British politics, Keir Starmer just got out, strategized, out-muscled, and out, charismed by a man who wrestles nature and wins. The only thing Starmer's ever wrestled is whether or not to support a strike. And he lost that too. And didn't just destroy Keir Starmer. He surgically extracted the myth of his leadership, kicked it into the Thames, and left behind a cautionary tale and possibly a scorched whiteboard. The mockery is in the energy. Ant walks into the metaphorical room, and Starmer disappears behind the curtain of "we're working on it." While Ant challenges mediocrity head on, Starmer manages to make maybe later sound like a mission statement. It's leadership by ellipsis. And it's not just about being tough. It's about clarity, direction, purpose. Ant Middleton may not have a manifesto, but he's got a message. Act, move, grow, improve. Starmer, bless him, is still loading the printer. This isn't a duel, it's a dismantling. There's no need for Starmer to respond, because Middleton's critique isn't personal. It's principled. It's not about a man. It's about a model. And that model is broken, hesitant, and wrapped in 5 layers of pure bubble wrap.